Hello everyone and welcome to episode 84, the Italian Reanimator of
In Response, a Legacy podcast.
I'm Philip Klein.
I am Daniel.
And I'm Peter Plank.
And we're talking about Legacy.
Most of the time.
You are listening to In Response, a Legacy podcast. A show where three handsome guys talk about their favorite Magic the Gathering format, Legacy.
I'm Peter Plank, the Artificer. I've got everything at hand in my Goblin Welders toolbox.
I'm Daniel, the Scientist. I ponder precisely about the next move that decides the fate of my opponents.
I'm Philip Klein, the Rogue. I use the graveyard to fuel opponents with agony.
And now, lean back and enjoy.
And for this time we have an incredible special guest for you. It's Matteo Blasi, Nimble Mongoose on Twitter. It's the reigning European champion of our beloved format of Legacy. Thank you very much, Matteo, for being here.
Thank you, guys. It's been an honor so far.
It's really great to have you here because I think it's the first time ever that somebody has made an interview with one of the winners of the European Legacy Masters, because I'm pretty sure we missed the last two chances that we had, and nobody else took it on. And this time we are really proud to have you here, and it's just insane. You're one of the most prominent Italian players out there, and for everyone who doesn't really know you, I mean, there might be someone in Europe out there. Tell us something about you. Who you are? How do you start that Magic? And tell us something about yourself, please.
Okay, so what can I say? I'm 32 years old. My name is Matteo. I work as a financial advisor in the north of Italy, close to Milan. I started, I think, like 20 years ago. It was 2004, and Kamigawa just came out. So it holds a special place in my heart still these days, I guess. But I don't actually remember when I started playing Legacy. The only thing I remember is that I was reading some kind of article on a paper magazine that used to talk about card games, and I found this article on Canadian Threshold. No name sounds familiar to the Legacy aficionados. And from there it was all the way Tempo for me. That's why the nickname.
Basically, all from the start, you already got hooked into Tempo as an archetype when you started Legacy.
Yeah, right away from the start.
Was there already Delver printed yet, or was the list so before Innistrad?
It was completely different. I think it was roughly 2007, 2008, maybe. So Delver was nowhere inside, and basically Nimble Mongoose and Warbeer were the beaters of the time. But Tarmogoyf was about to come in a few months, so I mean we got the beats from the start. Not the flying ones, but the green ones.
And the protective ones with Nimble Mongoose.
Yeah.
And I wasn't playing Legacy back then because I started Legacy 2012, so that's right when Dark Ascension came out. But for me, the question is, because I lived through the Tarmogoyf era where it went from €2 to about 50, 60.
Sure.
Did Tarmogoyf instantly find its place into Canadian trash?
I don't know if it found its way right from the start, but I think as soon as God came out, as you said, the price was like so low that it was on nobody's radar, and only eventually, in a month or so, it became the prominent creature that it used to be back then. And of course, it was like huge for the archetype, but also against the archetype, because you had no way of dealing with it easily besides the Mindex Pesners, or maybe like blocking and then bolting the Goyf. So it was different magic back then.
seems really great. I mean, we really love this kind of style of old Magic. Unfortunately, I think the times are long gone right now.
Unfortunately,
power level
because
has gone through the roof, I think. Yeah.
absolutely,
To the moon.
especially Canadian was back in the day really more like you control your opponent first, and then you would deploy your threats and then kill your opponent, which is not really a feasible strategy anymore these days, unfortunately.
Almost
But I
never,
love
unless
this.
unless you have a Merc Tide in hand. Otherwise, never happens.
Yeah, that's really, really unfortunate. But that's also the way you got your alias, your nickname, basically, because you're called Nimble Mongoose on Twitter, or Nimbles M.
Yeah.
Because you love the Canadian threshold play style that much. Is there any way you can replicate this right now? Is there a different format where you can try this kind of play style?
I don't think so, honestly. There are two examples I can tell you. Maybe one's like pre-modern, but yeah, Stifle is a played card, but it's in a combo archetype with Dreadnought, so you don't really get to Stifle that many fetch lands. Also because the mana base is completely different. Also, there's no Force of Will and stuff. Also, no dual lands, so it's not as good. And in Legacy, honestly, tempo decks have become a completely different beast, I think. Right now, you just want to push, and hopefully you kill them before they kill you, but it's become increasingly difficult to achieve so. And now Delver is basically non-existent besides the blue-black tempo version that we see running around, but it doesn't even play Delver anymore.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. They omitted their namesake card from the deck. I mean, it's still called Delver, or some people call it a Tempo.
It's mostly called Tempo.
Yeah, and I think that's really unfortunate, or it's really a shame for one of the most impactful cards out of the last, 15 years.
I find it actually funny because I think there was at some point a discussion where before all that happens with the threats, that people wanted Delver to be banned because of I don't know if it's probably too strong or something, but now it's not even strong enough anymore to be in the top decks of the format, which is funny, I think.
Yeah, the power creep simply went through the roof, because I was one of those people also who back then advised for a Delver ban, but that was with Dreadhorde Arcanist and Ren and 6, because simply back then the blue count would have been too low for Force of Will, so it would be kind of a trade-off. But now it's just Delver is simply not good enough anymore. Maybe as a 2-off if you find the room, but it's like there's so many other things to choose from.
Yeah, and to roundabout like into last year when we last saw like a Ruck Delver deck actually being in the format, in the form of the deck that Julian Jakobowitz actually used to win Eternal Weekend last year, which was basically a Ruck Delver shell, but way slower, controllier, a little bit focused on card advantage. It's a different kind of play style. And was this something that you actually played, Matteo? Or were you already in the Grief camp?
I actually love the list that was played by Juju Beam. Super nice deck. I'm not a big fan of the basic island, I gotta say. Sorry about that. Canadian threshold bias, I guess. But the deck was super fun to play, very rewarding. Also, you could play like the aggressive game, like the more mid-range game, thanks to the Druid. Druid was an amazing card. I'm not saying it's broken, but it's slotted perfectly into the archetype. And unfortunately, the deck is not really playable anymore now, because Frog is just a better card overall. It's not even close, and you're playing better colors overall. But the deck was amazing.
Yeah, I actually played against Julian Jakobowitz in round 9 at Eternal Weekend, and the deck was so strong because you had so many different angles. You had to respect the 8 1-drops aggro plan. You had to respect the long con. They had a good form of removal and card advantage. So it was like a really, really big beast, and it got completely shut down like at the start of the year with the grief decks. So especially with importing the Reanimator shell into it. And then the next thing, as you said, is Psychic Frog, and the color combination is just not playable anymore.
Yeah. I mean, it's playable, but it's not as efficient.
Yeah. Yeah, the mana base is just so much worse. We see it also with Grixis or Grixis Delver. It's simply not as good as being straight 2-color.
Yeah, exactly. Also with Moonstomp being so prominent, the mana base with basics, it's super good.
Okay, I think now we can thank our Patreons. So thank you very much, Christian Neutz, Matt Duncan, and Moritz Eichmeier for your support. If you like what we are doing, follow us on Twitter. It's @response_legacy, and also come to patreon.com/response_legacy. I think we can now go into the next section of this cast today with our guest. It's basically the whole European Legacy Masters. It's how do I say this? It's one of the most prominent tournaments in Europe that we have
for Legacy. Yeah.
For Legacy, for sure. Right beside Eternal Weekend, so these are the two biggest things that you can win. And we already know that qualifying in Italy is very ambitious. It's insanely hard because you have so many steps you have to go through, or so many loops to up through, and it's just insane. How do you qualify for the European Legacy Masters at first?
So in Italy, there's a few ways of qualifying first. So we have the Player of the Year ladder, and the top 3 spots at the end of the year get a slot. Then we have the ELM qualifiers, like everyone else. And also the winner of the Invitational also gets a qualification. Plus, we stole some spots abroad. But I honestly don't remember how I qualified, because I won a couple of ELM qualifiers, and also I was in the Player of the Year top 3. I think it was maybe the first ELM qualifier. Not sure about that, but probably that was it. Yeah.
So, but as far as I know, your ELM qualifiers are like the 4 seasons events. So these are
yes, plus those, yes.
Yeah, and I don't know, Peter, maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on that. How do the ELM qualifiers especially look in Italy?
It's the 4 seasons qualifiers. We have, as Matteo said, the 3 Player of the Year. Then you have a few, like around 100 people events that you can go through. And I think you actually, as you said, the slot was awarded at the first tournament at the start of the year, 2024.
In Pisa, I think, yeah.
In Pisa, yeah.
I think it was that one, probably.
Pisa-geddon, is it this one?
It's not Pisa-geddon, but yeah, it's kind of, yeah. Damnation, yes.
Fest.
Damnation Fest in Pisa, yes.
Yeah, and so you have those, and yeah, all of the tournaments are pretty high from a player perspective, because some nations have like tournaments with 20, 15 people that go to a single event. And in Italy, I think the smallest one was 70 people or something like that. So, and besides that, Player of the Year, really high caliber, because I think there's MTGO leagues, MTGO Challenge Top 8s award to those. Then the whole tournament scene in Italy, really hard to win those. And the Legacy Invitational is also something that is not that easy to win, because only the top dogs of Italy go there, and then you have to win a tournament again.
So as we already know, this is really a hard way to qualify. It's very easy actually to qualify in Austria, because we got 4 of our slots stolen from foreign players.
It is not easy for Austrians.
Yeah, it's pretty hard for Austrians actually, because the good players come from everywhere and simply grab their slots here and there. But at least we have international competition here.
This is actually a good point. Yeah, because and I don't know how you see this, Matteo, but we actually experienced this firsthand, kind of, because we have so many strong communities around Europe. I wouldn't say that we are a weak community per se. We are actually quite a big community for our small country, let's say. But still, a big, and if you have a lot of different tournaments, competition is of course much higher. There's higher stakes and so on. This fosters that people just play a little bit more competitive in these communities. How do you see in Italy specifically, the competitiveness versus casual level of legacy play in that sense? Well, just out of curiosity.
I think the answer varies depending on where in Italy we're playing, because the league we have in Milan, it's actually quite competitive. You know, there are very strong players like Fasoli, for example. He's always there, and a few others. So I think the average level is quite good. I mean, the level is good overall in all of Italy. Perhaps sometimes, like the low league with Donati and Covoni, they're having a little bit more fun sometimes, also because it's in the spirit of the game and in the community, you know. So, yeah, I think overall it's pretty decent almost everywhere.
This is almost also complementing the fact that you have just a quite strong player base competing in not only in your community but also as a fact then in the ELM itself also. So yeah, this makes sense.
Yeah, really beautiful picture that you did before playing the ELM with the cows, and it was really great.
Well, I would like to shout out. I'd like to thank Guidi again for doing a lot of work for the community and for the ELM project in itself, like purchasing with his own money all the shirts for the team. He was like having a second Christmas before the real one, you know.
Wow.
Yeah. Shut up.
I didn't know that. This is cool.
Yeah, that's insane. That's awesome, really. So, going back to the ELM, how did you choose your deck for the European Legacy Masters? Because there were, although I think, was Grief already banned? I'm not sure right now.
Yeah, it was banned for ELM.
There was the discussion if Psychic Frog gets the X like a week before.
Okay.
Or 2 weeks before, somewhere around the lines.
So how did you choose your deck for the European Legacy Masters? Were there other deck choices involved, or did you really or did you just focus beforehand? I want to play blue-black Reanimator and just want to train myself on this particular archetype.
Okay, let's say in my friend group, in my play group, I'm quite famous for like building up the deck at 3 a.m. in the morning and then having almost no sleeping time before the tournament. And this was not different. I honestly had reduced my choices to 3 decks. So I only brought the cards for this deck, so I wasn't tempted by anything else. On Friday, I gave it a try at Team Trios to Eldrazi's. Deck's very strong. It doesn't require a lot of knowledge of the format. So you can just push and see if they have it, or just get them eventually, even on the second turn sometimes. Not too bad. Also the Microspawn is such a good card. Second choice was Grixis Delva, because I had a lot of reps with the deck. I felt very confident with it, and also Power Blast was like a super good card against the frogs, and I was expecting a few control decks because like Italians love control decks, and in the middle was very good. So that would have been the safest choice, let's say, like by reps only. But I also had a couple tournaments under my belt with Reanimator, as it used to be called back then. I had never played the deck after the Grief ban, because like I wanted to spend the summer away from Magic cards, you know, like let them have it. I'm just going to enjoy my time, and then we'll see. And I talked with Drudy, of course, master of this combinator decks, and he gave me a couple hints, and I was like, yeah, why shouldn't I play the best deck in format? So let's just give it a go, and that was it.
So yeah, I can just say it again. Congratulations for the win. It's just one of the most strongest finishes I think anyone can wish for himself to win in Europe. So, did you face a lot of blue-black also during the tournament?
I don't really remember, honestly. I'm sure I played again. Oh, of course, I don't remember his name right now. The super young guy that came from England that I met in the finals.
Against Nico.
Nico, thanks. Thanks so much. Sorry, Nico. So I played him twice in the tournament, and I was his only loss twice, unfortunately for him. But we had like the greatest match of the tournament, I think. Of course, the mirror is not super fun in game one because you just have to reanimate the big targets before the opponent. So not a lot of skill there. But post-board games were super interesting. And I lost both game ones, but I managed to come back both times in the post-board games. So for sure, at least one blue-black, I played it twice.
This was something I think we also talked with Nico shorthand on that match, on that mirror match, because he had a different sideboarding plan, specifically against your version of the deck, because you just had more grindy, let's say, fairer cards like more Tarmogoyfs or Brazen Borers after sideboarding, which Nico didn't have. So he actually opted to keep in the Entomb package at least a small part of that.
Yeah, sure.
So that in the end he would have the I win button to power out over that, because he would probably for his view was the right choice to do so. But in the end, it still turned out in your favor, and I think this is actually a quite interesting aspect of the deck that is not super straightforward in terms of, I don't know, just winning the double, of course, which is still important, but so things like this where you actually get to see different sideboarding plans also depending on the version of the deck is, I think, at least something that is interesting.
Yeah, it was like...
If I can add something to that. Also, of course, I don't know for sure, but during the Swiss round when I played against Nico, I think he went for a fair post-board plan. But the main difference was that once in the finals, we had open deck lists. So he could see that I was not playing any graveyard gate in my 75. No. So keep leaving in a little bit of the Entomb package. It's definitely the right choice against my version of it.
Yeah, but he still said, because like I think you were on 3 Tarmogoyfs and 2 Brazen Borer in the sideboard, he was on 2 and 1 respectively. So it was like just two slots less that he can use in the fair matchup. And yeah, it's still a thing that is very, very exhausting because it's small incremental advantages. I mean, Tarmogoyf, if it smashes through like once or twice, it's quite a huge advantage. Also with Psychic Frog, but you still have to play against removal. You have to cut. You have to pick your fights with days and such. So it's a really, really hard matchup to play.
And connecting to that, I have a question for one aspect that I have actually heard in some discussions before when you talk about the mirror and sideboarding. How do you view Troll as a card in the mirror? Sometimes, and I think we saw this on stream, one, let's say, potential problem if you use your own trolls is that your opponent gets to reanimate the opposing trolls. I think it was your match, however, this got punished by Brazen Borer simply by that. And I think this was actually interesting situation, but how do you see that specific card in that matchup for that reason?
Okay, let's say first, the deck is a little bit more mana hungry than it looks like. So you're heavy on 2 drops, and you're basically playing in between 16 and 17 real land drops, including the wastelands. So it's not really feasible to cut the trolls anyway, because the opponent is playing days and wastelands. So you just need the search for land, right? So you have just to live with it. Also, it gets punished pretty heavily by Brazen Borua, especially if they go for the fast reanimation, which is reanimate. So basically they lose a card, 6 lives for nothing in return. So yeah, I think Nico actually wasn't pleased with his choice of reanimating my troll in the end, and he was like, I should have played a little bit more slowly and get the value out of reanimate on his own creatures. So I don't think it's as big of a problem, especially now where you not only have the Brazen Borrowers, but also 1 or 2 Dark Betrayals in the board. So it's even easier to deal with the troll now.
So basically we have now the sideboarding also covered with simple leveling over your opponent. But now really one of the big questions. Where is the painting?
I'm not sure you can see it from here, but it's as soon as you open the door, the entrance to my home, there's the big painting right over there. Actually, everyone loved it. So yeah,
it's good.
It's in a place where I can see it every time.
Yeah. So for context, for viewers that didn't know, this was the big prize that the winner was given to for the ELM. That was sponsored by the Italian
artist Florinda Zanetti.
Exactly, yeah. And
she did an amazing job.
Of the,
it's insane. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, I think we can view this painting in the video.
Yeah, we put it right here
for the viewers as well.
So, looking a little bit into the future, or maybe not really in the future because it's happening right now. This Metamorphosis Fanatic.
Sure.
We were a little bit not a big of a fan of it. We talked about it briefly in the last episode, and it was like we were torn if it's really that good. But now it has it was the bomb. It's exploded and it's basically in every list right now. How is your feeling about Fnatic? Is it overhyped? Is it just flavor of the month? Or is it really that great?
Okay, so let's say I never played with Fnatic until like last Sunday. Where I was like, I went to my shop and got a couple of Fanatics. They didn't have a third copy, so I guess 2 is the right number. And I went through tournament, went undefeated with the deck. So I gotta say, Fnatic played a big part in a couple games. But my impression is not as crazy as it might look like from the results of the deck. I think, let's start with this. I'm not good at evaluating cards unless they fit in tempo shells. Okay, so this is a must, I have to say. So when I saw the card at first, like you guys, I was thinking the card was okay. Nothing crazy, a little bit clunky. Yeah, maybe some people will try it out, and eventually it's not going to be like the flavor of the month for too long. But after playing with it, yes, the card is not broken by any means, but it gives you a little bit more power into the mid-range plan right from the game 1. So you don't depend on anything, and even if they have like Graveyard Tate post boards, well, yeah, sure thing, you can remove my card, I get my 4/4 lifelink for 2 mana, and if this is the floor of the card, the ceiling is much higher, much higher. So yeah, it slots perfectly into the deck. I'm not sure if 2 or 3 copies is the right number, but definitely something between the 2.
For me, Fnatic right now feels a little bit, or reminds me a little bit of the old No Bad Cards Delver era, where you simply try to put as many high floor cards as possible and cutting all the, or put as many high floor, low ceiling cards into the deck and lower the amount of low floor, high ceiling cards like Stifle, for instance, and Animate Dead is, I think, a little bit more on a lower floor, higher ceiling, because you can target your opponent's graveyard.
There are different aspects.
Different aspects, and Metamorphosis Fanatic is always like a 4/4 with lifelink. For two, so
this is kind of the trade-off. And
especially since Metamorphosis Fanatic, especially against decks with Leyline of the Void, can still be a big role player. It's also quite good, I have the impression, against like the mono-red Stompy versions, because like a 4/4 lifelink in there, and sometimes you even get the Reanimate out of it, is insane. And Animate Dead wouldn't be too broken. And one thing with Metamorphosis Fanatic is like, it's still good against Leyline decks, because, as you said, like a 4/4 lifelink, and against Swords to Plowshares decks, which notably normally don't play Leyline of the Void. If the card resolves, you get in the Reanimate effect as well. So you have the 2-for-1 in there.
Also, it's also... Yeah, like I said, it's great against Leyline of the Void. And what I wanted to say is, nobody plays Leyline of the Void anymore. It's simply gone from the meta. I haven't seen it in ages. Not
also...
Even,
go ahead.
Playing it. Not even Stomp is playing it anymore, because they are now on
Fairy Macabre.
Fairy Macabre. Eldrazi is on Fairy Macabre. Basically, every deck is right now on a combination of Fairy Macabre, Mindbreak Trap, or something like Nihil Spellbomb, Ghost Vacuum. Also, right now is pretty high, because I talked with Andreas, one of our local guys who plays Blue-Black Reanimator, and he said he doesn't really like spell bombs, because they are one-time uses, and everything else is 2 mana. It's a little bit too slow. It's a little bit too clunky, and the Ghost Vacuum seems like the right choice in the mirror, because you often only have to exile 1 card at most, and it's just 1 mana less. And you need targeted graveyard removal that's repeatable all the time. And so I can see that there will be even less Leyline in the future, and maybe more targeted graveyard removal like hers, Surgical, Macabre, and Ghost Vacuum.
Have you tried Ghost Vacuum, Matteo?
It is so good. It's so good. I played it. I played it on Sunday. I think it's by far the best graveyard data card in Legacy right now. And also, the second ability at 6 mana, it's not something you can forget about in long games, because they tend to go long.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen plenty of hardcast trolls, so those are at 6 mana. We will see for sure some hardcast Metamorphosis Fanatics, which are 6 drops as well. So
1/1 attracts us from Ghost Vacuum.
It's not too bad.
With an Archon.
With Archon, sounds insane.
No, it's super good. Also just frogs. Flying frogs.
Oh yeah, flying frogs. They don't even have to remove cards from your graveyard anymore. Insane. Basically the deck still is the boogeyman of the format, and it continues to be. What is your feeling? Is the deck which tier do you slot the deck in?
I mean, I think there's only one correct answer. It's the highest tier.
Is there any bad, really, really abysmal matchup out there that you typically can't win?
I was talking about this with somebody right the other day. I think the deck has everything covered up. The deck that feels like the most difficult to play against is by far Lens, I think. Even though you can play like a couple Harbingers, like we do, but the problem is Lens can attack you on so many different spots that you could be like vulnerable to at the same time, and you cannot deal with exploration easily. So I think that's probably the matchup I would rather not face. But everything else seems at least beatable with a little bit of tricks in the board. And one thing I've noticed is that barrel golf has become so much worse in the mirror right now because of vacuum. So I can see a world where we're not playing barrel golfs anymore.
Okay, interesting. But this makes sense. You can shrink selectively the golfs and just make
because
them not.
Before you had just frogs emptying each other's graveyards, but leaving something. Now with vacuum, that little something that used to stay in the graveyard doesn't stay there anymore for long, right? So we had a couple spots where there was an animate that into play with barrel golf on it, and the -1 actually came very relevant because there was never more than one type of cards in the graveyard. So the card was completely useless, even as a blocker.
Okay, wow.
So Ghost Vacuum basically cleaning up all the rest in the graveyard.
Yeah. And Fanatic is just unkillable.
More Ghost Vacuum in the future.
Exactly.
It's like a perfect legacy staple right here. So get your Ghost Vacuums. So with Blue-Black Reanimator or Froginator being in S tier really basically since Grief times, since over a year right now. How does that make you feel? Is the format, in your opinion, healthy, or does it need some kind of banning, or will it even out over the time? What's your opinion on that?
I honestly would like to see Frog stay in the format, but in Delphi shares because I love them so much. But I think the Frog is just too good of a card in Legacy right now, not because of the power level itself, but because of how many weak spots it covers in different decks. And it's always good, so you cannot side out your removals ever because the card just snowballs. You cannot play without it if you're playing those colors, because it's the best thing you can do with those colors by a wide margin. Time doesn't even come close to the cards. So I like to play games that are not decided in between the first 2 turns of the game. But right now, that's what all Legacy is about, I think. A little bit more than I'd like to, at least. So if we could slow the format down by half a turn or a turn, I would be quite happy, honestly.
Yeah, what's your opinion? How would you achieve that? Is Frog enough to ban, or do we need a whole basically carpet of bans over the format to just even things out? There are different approaches right now, because there's the Mextortion approach where you get one card from that archetype, one card from that archetype, one card from that, and basically where you even everything out. There are other people who say no, just weaken the mid-range plan of Blue-Black, that's enough. And other people advise for nuking Blue-Black with Entomb, Reanimate, or Frog ban. I mean, there are several philosophies out there. In which camp are you?
I think that we're by far in... how can I say that? Let's say that right now Legacy is in a spot where all of the decks are like so powerful that as soon as you touch one, all of the others, a good part of them like become so good that eventually some other decks will be put in a corner, right? So I don't think it's really feasible to ban 1 or 2 cards from every archetype, because that makes no sense at all from any point of view. So if the metagame share of the archetypes are somewhat reasonable, I think we can just leave things as they are. Maybe Frog, as we said, not because the card is just good, but because of what it does, as we said before. And I wouldn't mind, honestly, seeing like Entomb or Reanimate leave the format. I remember Entomb was not legal until a few years ago at GP Madrid, I think, some very close in time. So I could see a Legacy where Entomb is not legal anymore, and the Reanimate becomes just an average card.
That's true.
But right now we cannot do much. I think we're too late to do that.
Yeah, probably.
Then we can unban Mystical Tutor.
No. I think that's fun. Yeah, then unban Flash or something. Yeah.
Why not?
Why not?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Matteo, for having you here. I think we can wrap this episode up. Where can we find you, Matteo, on social media?
Okay, so you can find me on Twitter. I mean X right now. So on at Nimblest M, or on MTGO it's Nimble Mongoose. I had enough character to put in the complete name there.
Sounds awesome. You can find me on our social media. It's at FinnickMTG, PHINEKMTG.
You can also find me on social media. It's at Flying Delver there.
And you can find me on Twitter. It's at Unicorn Lord, but the O in the Lord is a 0.
Thank you very much again, Matteo. It's a pleasure to have you here, and it was great talking to you.
Yeah, same for me. Thanks you guys again.
But now, in response, the end.
This was In Response, a Legacy podcast. If you enjoyed the ride, feel free to support the show by following, leaving a review, or subscribe on patreon.com/response_legacy.